I have a question. Why are some companies so successful at IT and some companies just don't seem to get it?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's also what I see is some companies struggle with their productivity and their processes and their even retaining the right people. And other companies, regardless of size, they just flow. They just go and they are really really productive and successful.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if it's startups or enterprises. There are successful enterprises or failing startups. Um, we need to do something about this.
Yeah, and I think that I recognize some of the patterns that are actually common in all those companies. But why not make a podcast out of this?
Yeah, good idea. Welcome to the Lead Podcast, episode 1.
The Lead Podcast, a podcast for leaders in engineering, architecture, and development.
Geert, welcome.
Welcome, René. So, this is the Lead Podcast. What lead means is leaders in engineering and architecture and development.
Exactly. And that is what we are going to talk about in this series of podcasts. It's actually not one.
It's episode 1.
It's episode 1. So I think it's appropriate that we start with an episode 1 where we actually introduce what we are going to talk about and what is it that we see in terms of patterns in all these different companies that we started with.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think what we really want to talk about in this episode and the coming episodes is how to build a really good engineering culture that enables you to be really successful as a company in doing IT.
So an engineering culture, that is. So shall we first start with explaining what an engineering culture actually is? Because otherwise we are talking about this concept, what we think an engineering culture is, but I don't know if everybody actually knows what we think. So let's start with that. So what kind of patterns did we recognize? And we put that in this, well, what do you say, design concept of an engineering culture that we actually define as 8 different areas that we need to look at when you have these struggles to become actually a software company. So maybe we should start there. What is it that we want to achieve?
So what we want to achieve is have a company that is successful in using IT to become a better business, right? Deliver more value to your end customers by using IT. And that's more than just building great software. It's also how you run it, how you operate your company. All these things are involved, and that's how you came with these 8 pillars that we defined, that are different areas to where you need to focus on to actually make this all work together.
Yeah, and I think what also is important is I think that it is really appropriate for not only the startups or the scale-ups or even software companies. So I really came back from the idea that the mantra of every company is an IT company. And we were talking about that with other people, and every time we got this pushback on no, because we are a bank or we are a company that builds machines or I don't know, some industrial company. We are not a software company. And I think they are right. They are not an IT company. But most of those companies are really shifting their business towards also digital services. And then there is a department or a piece of the company that actually focuses on building software.
Yeah.
So I think we should redefine on every company is an IT company or software company there is a piece of every company that actually should be operated as a software company.
And it's also a known phrase, right? The software is eating the world. I think that's still happening. Software is still getting an increasing amount of traction within companies and changing businesses, changing their how businesses actually do their business. Software is still a key component in almost all of the companies.
Yeah. So I think that we should also a little bit talk about, so what is it that are the patterns that we actually see? And
so we came up with 8 pillars. So
8
let's
pillars.
go over them to get a definition, and after that we do that, we will explain how we will actually cover these different pillars in the different episodes, having guests, etc.
Exactly.
So the first pillar, René, what?
I think it all starts with a clear digital vision. So the first pillar is clear digital vision, because what we see a lot happening is that companies know that they need to build some kind of software or some kind of service, but really the vision on what is it that we are actually going to deliver in terms of digital capabilities, that is not completely clear. So it's actually we get started and we are going to build that software or that service for the customer, but well, what is the end state, or what are we going to land on in 3 or 5 years, and what are we going to do in terms of enterprise architecture or something, so that it actually lands in the organization? That is not always the case. So that leads to chaos. In a later stage. So that is I think it all starts with that. You need to know where you are going. You need to define and design with the end.
It also
in mind.
defines the why.
Exactly.
Why digital is actually an important role within the company.
Yeah.
So the next pillar. Let's go to the second.
Yeah,
pillar.
and I think then the next pillar. So the whole model is that you can like interchange all these. There is not really a sequence, but when the clear digital vision is there, it usually starts with building the right software. We are going to build that service or that piece of code for the customer so that it can be used, that product.
Yeah.
So the next pillar is state-of-the-art software engineering. So I can also explain, but what do you think state-of-the-art software engineering is all about?
When I think about state-of-the-art software engineering, means that we use modern tools, modern architectures, using the cloud, etc. All the stuff that enables us in this modern day and age to build software in a faster way, in a scalable way, in a cheaper way.
Yeah.
Everything that just resolves around building software and doing that in a great way.
Yeah, and also making it really maintainable, because it's a greenfield software, but also brownfield software can also be state of the art. Although it's maybe not the latest and greatest technology, it can be still state of the art software. So it's all about doing it right.
Yeah, building it with quality and maintenance in mind.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really, it's not pushed with features only in mind, but also quality, maintainability, having it there for a long time.
Exactly.
Being able to expand on it, shift with it when there's new business requirements, etc.
That's that. And then we automatically actually moved the third pillar, and that is the smooth delivery. So it's great if you can build great state-of-the-art software, which runs fine, which has all the features necessary, is secure and compliant, and those all great. But if you are not able to actually deliver it to your customers in a timely fashion, or maybe multiple times a day, or whatever is appropriate, if your processes around your delivery, your pipelines, your automation, but maybe also your processes in terms of change management, ITIL, or whatever you use, if that is not in place, it's going to be very hard and tough process to actually deliver that value. So we need to also pay attention to that.
Yeah, we see that in the current time we need to be able to adapt fast when the market changes, right? So being able to deploy or release software like once or twice a year, which still a lot of companies do, that's unheard of, basically, right? So we really need to move that up a lot so we can just adapt to all kinds of changes that happen in the world, in this global economy.
Yeah, and then when you actually delivered your software, and that is the fourth pillar already, is then it's running somewhere, maybe in the cloud, hopefully in the cloud. But in the cloud, you need to also have your continuity into place. Because if it runs, but actually nobody looks at it when it breaks, then you're also not in a good place.
This is also where we see a lot of DevOps practices come to mind, right? We already talked about state-of-the-art software engineering, where we build quality in mind, well, this quality really comes to mind when it is actually running in production, right? Then is the time that we see how much quality did we build into our application. Is it able to withstand turbulent conditions when there are certain outages or when there's high load? How does our application cope with that?
Yeah, and also, do you actually see it? So your observability and maybe the people that are actually fixing the problems. Do you have SRE practices in place? And I think also very important that, and that is the word appropriate continuity. Not every application needs a 99.999% availability. If you have an application that is used during business hours, why spend millions or maybe thousands of euros or dollars into keeping the availability to 5 nines, while maybe it's only, business hours is good enough, and the rest of the time you can experiment, release, and do whatever you like. So appropriate is very important to think about it.
And when I think about appropriate, I don't even think about nines. I think about user impact.
Yeah.
Our applications are built for our users and how our users actually use the software. If we build software in such a way that there can be outages but the users are not impacted, that's even better. So we don't have to focus on these technical service levels, but more on service levels that really impact our users.
Yeah, and that I think also a little bit shifting to the fifth pillar, which is power through platforms. Because what we also see a lot of things happening is that people or companies or development teams are building all kinds of their own tools to host and to monitor and to do all kinds of uptime guarantees. And we really believe in power through platforms. So use the tools, use the platforms that are out there. Don't water it down in your own flavor because you are so unique or you are so important. No, just take the platform, use the power of the platform that is out there, and build on top of that instead of building your own flavors of things that are already there.
Yeah, we see a big trend in the industry there as well around platform engineering. And why I think this is really important is that the things that we ask of these engineering teams to take ownership of is becoming more and more, right? A long time ago, development teams just needed to work on certain features, and of course security and those kind of things were already things that they had to keep in mind. But with the move to DevOps, operations was also starting to become a part of their jobs, and then that started to include building cloud infrastructure, running cloud infrastructure. So you don't only need to be an expert on building the software, running the software, running the infrastructure, building the infrastructure. All those kind of things just becomes too much of a burden for all those teams to actually be productive. And that's where those platforms can really lower that burden for those teams, so that they can focus more on actually that business value that they were they should focus on.
Yeah, so that really brings us into the shaping of the organization. Like you have platform teams, you have product teams, you have teams that are delivering features. Maybe there are different kind of teams that deliver IT services or platform services to the teams to actually enable them to do the stuff themselves. And that brings us to the sixth pillar, and that is empowering operating model. Because what we see a lot happening is that the technological things are more or less in place. So we have these software engineers, we have our delivery processes more or less defined. Maybe we have our DevOps practices around continuity. But the organization as a whole, or maybe the department, if it's not a software company, but that part of the company that builds the software is not organized around value. So that means we see a lot of silos, we see a lot of handovers, we see different kind of teams doing stuff that are dependent on other teams. So we also say, if you want to be successful as a software company, you also need to take a look at your operating model. So organize around value, put people with different capacity into the same teams, build it, you run it, A to Z responsibility, autonomy in the team. So that also asks something about leadership. How do you steer these people?
Yeah. Completely different KPIs to your original departments.
Exactly. So there is no handovers anymore, and there's not operational excellence within the silo. It's operational excellence around the value stream, and if you ask me, I want to see it in all companies on all levels. But at least if you are building software, organize your software practice around value, and keep your organization as flat as possible.
Okay, great. So we defined 6 pillars already, which is quite a lot to cope. I think there's 2 more, which are more on the organizational side, supporting these other 6 pillars. One is knowledge driven, being a good IT company requires you to have the right knowledge, but also invest in attaining new knowledge, because the world of technology is not sitting still. It's changing in a rapid pace. So having a culture where you really invest in knowledge is key.
And I don't know about you, but I'm always amazed by people that did not look at anything newer than 5 years. We are working in a company that or in a industry that is shifting constantly, and the framework of today is already old and out of date tomorrow. And I don't say that you need to reinvest every time and over and over again in every framework, but you need to at least know what is out there and know what you can use and know the existence of things, and keep investing in yourself. But I also truly believe that not everybody should invest in everything. And that is why the knowledge sharing, the knowledge driven part is so important. Because if I know something, I can share it with you, so you don't have to know that right away. And if you build a culture of knowledge, then you can rely on each other. And then you can really build upon each other's knowledge to actually take the next step.
Great stuff.
Yeah, and then I think that brings us also to, it's a little bit related, and that is the last pillar of this whole model, and that is the epic workplace. Because we also want to retain the talent that we bring in-house.
Yeah, and that we invest in.
Yes, because if we invest years of knowledge and then they move on to the competitor, that will be a shame. So workplace is important.
Yeah, so really create a workplace that people feel valuable in, really feel at place, feel safe.
Exactly.
So they can explore new ideas, feel safe enough to experiment, fail, learn new things. Because those are the things that bring new innovation, right? Being able to fail is really key.
Yeah, and I think many companies invest a lot in pinball machines, great couches, an Xbox or a PlayStation. And of course, that is nice because people want to feel like at home and feel nice and comfortable. But it's not actually what it is about. Yeah. Because why do actually people want to be at their office or spend time with their colleagues? That is not because of the Xbox machine. No, it is because they feel safe.
Cool stuff.
And you want to work on cool stuff, and you want to share your feelings, and you want to share your personal situation, and you want to feel at home and safe enough to actually be yourself. And I think that is what an epic workplace is all about, that you shape the conditions that people can be safe and therefore do all the right things.
Okay. Well, that was quite a lot to cover. 8 different pillars.
Yeah.
So this is the first episode of our podcast. How are we going to shape these 8 pillars into a podcast?
Yeah, so my idea, I don't know for sure, but I think that we can talk all day long about these things. We see a lot. We spend a lot of time at different companies. But wouldn't it be great if we then maybe can introduce some guests and bring people aboard that actually talk about their engineering culture within the companies that we all know and love?
Yeah, and share their stories, their learnings about the stories that their companies went through. Because And we often see these different models of how certain companies did certain things, but often there's a story behind that, right?
Yeah.
Companies make certain decisions because they are in a certain state, a phase of their lifespan, their size, things that are happening in the world. So blatantly copying different models, we've seen that with the Spotify model being copied by a lot of companies. I don't believe those things work. So having people here talk about their stories and why they made certain decisions and took different routes with their companies in shaping their engineering culture would be really valuable.
Yeah, and I think that we can also blend in a lot of episodes around, maybe a specific pillar. So let's do an episode around state-of-the-art software engineering, and maybe we can also talk about an epic workplace. What do we know about shaping an epic workplace? So we can blend that in, and hopefully you can get a lot of value out of that, and really you think about the things that you can maybe do yourself as well, listener of this podcast and also leader of your own company.
Yeah, I really think that these stories of these different companies can evolve around one of those pillars. Explaining that pillar a bit more and how they deal with that pillar can be really valuable. And I think that works for stories from startups to enterprise. So we'll start to try to mix all of those things up. Having people from different companies all over the world to see how they build great engineering culture. I think that would be a really cool thing, and hopefully you as listener as well.
Yeah, so call to action for you. Think about these pillars. So maybe take a look at our website and see about these pillars and see what they actually mean to you. And then, let us know. Let us know the topics that you are struggling with so that we can build an episode around that. And I think that with that, we are already at the end of this first episode of the Lead Podcast.
Yeah, thanks, René.
Yeah, it was really nice. I think we should do this more often.
Yeah, hopefully you tune in again for the next episode where we will have our first guest talking about one of those engineering pillars.
Yes, thank you. See you next time.
The Lead Podcast.